Hello everyone, and thanks for being with us today. We are absolutely delighted to welcome you in this event where we will be sharing the work that we have been doing with Cercle Interrel and with the group Women and AI. The artificial intelligence is a great tool which is already widely used and useful for the companies, but it also brings sometimes challenges around ethics. We hear about transparency, data protection, responsibility, and discrimination linked to the bias, including gender bias. So the objective of this hour that we will spend together are multiple. First of all, to get you familiar with, if you are not already, of course, with what artificial intelligence is about and the different uses in companies. Secondly, we would like to explain to you how it represents an ethical and diversity issue that companies must take up. And by the way, we will listen to executives talk about it. Finally, we want to show that it is possible to act concretely towards a responsible and gender-fair AI, thanks to the tremendous mobilization of the actors on the field, and thanks to Cercle Interrel, of course, which proposes a solution ready-made, I would say, for each company which wishes to act in this direction. I am referring, of course, to the Women and AI pledge for responsible and gender-fair AI that will take time later on to detail with you. So, without further delay, I am going to hand over to 6 members of Interrel: Myriam Ben-Abdallah Bernstein, Suzy Marin, Sonia Bécassis-Leland, Hélène Quillot, and Sandrine Borton to talk about AI. Would it be on set or in duplex? Myriam.
Thank you, Marine. So artificial intelligence, or AI, is not a new concept, yet there is not a single definition for it. We've been talking about artificial intelligence since the mid-50s with the Alan Turing's universal machines, or thinking machines. So for a human being, making the difference between a cat and a dog is an easy task. Yet for a computer in classical programming, this is a complicated task. And it took a complete change in computer logic for computers to be able to perform this task as good, if not better, than human beings.
When you refer to a change, you are referring to machine learning, deep learning. Suzy Marin?
Yeah, let me first explain what is classical programming. It's processing, sorting, storing. It is still used today by a lot of programmers. To give you a simple example, let's take the conditional programming. It does use if, then, else instruction. Now let's apply it to image recognition. If the object has 2 wheels and it has pedals, then it's a bike. On the other hand, if it has no pedal but a handlebar, then it's a scooter. Now, if it has 4 wheels, it's a car. That's really deterministic. Now, what's the difference with artificial intelligence? Artificial intelligence is a set of techniques that allows processors, accelerators to kind of mimic mental activities. The relevant notions here are perception, reasoning, like learning, anticipation, adaptation, and finally, decision-making. It's not anymore deterministic, but rather based on probabilistic logic. And a subset of AI is machine learning. And machine learning refers to the ability of a machine to make predictions without being programmed for the task, but simply through direct learning from the provided data. Let's continue with the image classification example. The AI system have been provided with labeled images, a lot of images. It's a bike, it's a car, it's a scooter, it's a bike, it's a car, it's a scooter, and so on. The system will learn and adapt in this training phase. And eventually, it will be able to recognize a bike, or a car or a scooter when an image will pop up later on during the inference phase. What about deep learning? Well, deep learning is a subset of machine learning that uses multiple layers of neural networks to extract progressively features from the input data. In our image processing example, lower layers of the neural network can, for instance, identify edges, pieces of background, and higher layers can identify wheels or handlebar, till the final answer. That image is representing a car. I hope I answered your question, Marine, with this very simple example.
I understand those techniques are not so new, so why do we see such an explosion of artificial intelligence? Sonia Bécassis-Leland?
Thank you, Marine. I would even talk about a revolution. Yeah, because for several reasons. First, now we have unprecedented access to large database like ImageNet is the most famous one of the most famous one. Secondly, we have expanded capacity to store and manage millions and billions and trillions of data. Third, we are able to process this data. And lastly, we have witnessed a reduction in latency, which is in secular English like a response time. So I would say AI is ubiquitous. And so if someone is telling you, no, AI, as far as I'm concerned, AI is not for me yet, chances are this person is very wrong. For instance, this person might have an iPhone, like most people do. Like I have an iPhone myself, smartphone. So I use AI, like to sign off, I will look at my iPhone, it's going to recognize me. I have a virtual assistant. I have so-called intelligent video. And I have an app that's going to calculate the life expectancy of my battery, and so on and so on. So we have millions of use cases so far. So it could be for final users, like an iPhone, like my connected watch. It could be for businesses as well, like Internet of Connected Objects, which is called IoT, or even smart cities. And speaking of businesses, most businesses not only utilize AI, but they produce AI. And it's a case of companies that are part of Cercle Interrel, and we're going to show you a few examples.
Indeed, Sonia. So let's make a virtual roundtable to hear about those concrete usage of AI in companies, starting with Muriel Garde for IBM.
IBM has been developing AI for 10 years now for clients. During the COVID-19 pandemic, not yet in the rear-view mirror, unfortunately, organizations have been confronted to a huge volume of customers, citizens, employees, patients eager to get answers on the situation. IBM addressed this challenge by training the Watson Assistant, the leading conversational AI platform, to answer common questions around COVID-19. In the United Kingdom, TSB, a retail and commercial bank, launched in 5 days a new smart agent function based on Watson Assistant. And this agent gave a customer immediate access to all the measures the bank put in place during the pandemic, such as the repayment of holiday on a mortgage or personal loan or commercial loan. In another example, I could mention Retailit. It's an Italian company working on the telecom sector. And this company has selected IBM Planning Analytics as the centralized platform for budgeting, forecasting, or reporting all their financial process. This model includes predictive analysis based on AI that improves the accuracy of the forecast and provides the business with critical data for better informed decision making.
Thea Rukavina for Orano. What's happening there?
So Orano is the world leader in recycling nuclear fuel and also in uranium production and dismantling of nuclear facilities. In Orano, we develop and use solutions based on AI to optimize industrial operations and to increase performance. We also use this to provide managers and also our operators directly on site with decision-making tools to help them decide on very important subjects for the nuclear safety and for the nuclear safety. Okay. We have a lot of data that are collected all over our industrial facilities, and we are actively seeking new ways of exploiting them and putting them to good use to be able to obtain real-time solutions and conclusions. Some examples of the use of artificial intelligence in Orano include predictive maintenance, supervision of processes and activities in our facilities, but also optimization tools to assist engineers in their daily duties in some projects. One of the AI solutions I was working on was related to the optimization of reinforced concrete slabs. That is a civil engineering application. So to use less material and to reduce cost and also to avoid errors. So the AI can help us get all these results much quicker, actually 1,000 times quicker than traditional solutions.
Thanks, Melody Sperandio for GE Healthcare.
GE Healthcare is a global leader in medical imaging. For more than 40 years, it has been a major actor in the development of digital solutions for healthcare. In that context, our teams develop AI-based solutions for healthcare professionals. For instance, our advanced visualization teams have developed 4 years ago a software that allows to identify automatically the vertebra in CT spine examinations. This task can easily be performed by radiologists, but is time-consuming with limited clinical added value. By developing this type of AI-based solution, the goal is to help healthcare professionals focus on clinical interpretation of data.
Eric Mercadet for SAP.
I can give you some examples, very obvious examples. Part of the intelligent suite of SAP, there is of course some HR systems on business processes, and of course here that's where the notion of gender is, prevalent everywhere, and from the way that, for example, you are writing your job offers, your job descriptions, down to then after that the way that you are following, the female on the male segments of your employees, for example, in order to detect some bias, for example, in salary or promotion progressions and all those kind of things. So that's one of the example of things that are, completely at the core and at the center of some of our offers. And then more generically, you know that SAP has a lot of I would say technologies around analytics in general.
Suzy Armstrong from Qualcomm.
Though Qualcomm is known as one of the world's leading wireless technology companies, a little-known fact is that we are also deeply involved in AI. Our chipsets provide the silicon and software engines and accelerators for AI applications. We are also increasingly involved in using AI in our own offerings, for example, tuning in real time our wireless antennas.
Schlumberger is an oil and gas service provider in the energy, and we are making decisions, or we have to make decisions where sometimes human cannot be. So for example, while you are drilling, the tools will measure a lot of information, a lot of parameters down in the earth. And this information cannot be brought to the surface because of the connectivity. And human needs to use these measurements to make decisions at the surface, change some parameters, some speed, some mud weight, and so forth. And what we do with AI is actually replicate the human analysis of these data, which could be images taken down in the hole, and come up with the decision. One of the other examples is to accelerate or automate certain decisions where the human could do it, but they don't have the time to parse all the documentations or to open every single information that is in the database. So the AI can actually crawl, make the calculation, bring the decision again to the human, so we can act on it.
And I can also give some example for Lenovo. We are an IT solution provider, including notebooks, tablets, smartphones, but also infrastructure and services for all kinds of users, consumer, large enterprise, public sector. And as an example, we are including AI for facial recognition, for example, to lock or unlock the access to your PC, but also for maintenance prediction, or another one is about chatbot for the remote assistance. So we talked about companies. What about research? Sonia?
Thank you, Marine. Indeed, AI is a fast-growing research field, not only in terms of use cases, and in terms of techniques. For instance, let's talk about techniques. It is about how to learn without having to label data, because labeling data is what is costly and time-consuming in the field of AI, because you need a human intervention to label every data. How to make neural networks more efficient. How to ensure that you consume less to produce AI. How to ensure that your AI is more robust, reliable, and fast, trustworthy, and non-discriminant. And in terms of use case, you have many cases where AI is integrated. The choice is very wide, but I will limit myself to a few. For instance, self-driving cars, which is more than a prototype now. You have also what's called in the world of banking, credit scoring. It's when you go to your bank and request a loan. And last, that got a lot of press recently, it's medical engineering. The AI will help the practitioner get much more insightful when he's assisted or she is assisted by AI. So we have all these cases, and as a result, we can say that AI is robust, fast, but as a result, we can wonder ourselves, is it fair? Indeed, when you think about AI, you have to think about ethics. And when I mean ethics, I mean the code of conduct, the guidelines for a precise domain of activity that would have an impact of society. Because what would seem blindingly obvious for you today was not always obvious. For instance, since we are interrel, let's talk about women's rights. Until the 19th century, and even half of the 20th century in France, for women to be able to vote, let alone be eligible, was not even considered as a topic. And I could go on and on and on. But I will mention that for the United Nations Convention for Discrimination, actually not for discrimination, against discrimination against women, that was enacted in the late 70s. It has one merit that defines a common ground for everyone to refer to. And this is what AI can rely on to build upon.
So if gender discrimination is not tolerated anymore, then wouldn't it naturally be the case for AI, Sandrine Morton?
So you're completely right in theory, Marine, but in reality, there are several examples of AI systems that are not gender neutral. For example, in 2015, there was an experiment conducted by Amazon to automatically screen resumes to ease recruitment. However, it was later revealed that despite equal credentials, male applicants were favored for positions in science and technology positions and areas. Such bias is primarily due to the use of historical data in the training of the algorithm and the associated datasets. Indeed, the bodies of knowledge available today reflect our history. Therefore, equality between men and women, as we know, was not really ensured. So, as already explained by Suzy previously, machine learning is a set of artificial intelligence techniques that seek to detect patterns in a body of knowledge. Therefore, these techniques tend to reproduce or even amplify the biases embedded in the historical datasets used to train them. So, given that male profiles were overrepresented in Amazon workforce, the machine learning model was trained on this historical dataset and was rejecting resumes containing the word women, as well as candidates who had studied in women's college, as there are some in the US. The artificial intelligence biases, especially on gender issue, are a particularly alarming problem. First, because they undermine the very positive contribution of this technology to various fields like research, science, health, energy, or transportation, as we already saw. Second, these biases are very difficult to detect, both in the datasets used to train the models and in the results also of the predictive models, which can be very difficult to explain.
And I think that unfortunately, that was not an isolated cases, an isolated example. Hélène Quillot?
In late 2019, an investigation was launched in the United States about Apple's credit card, following a complaint by a user who had been offered a credit limit 20 times higher than his wife, despite him having a worse credit repayment history, a credit score, than his wife. So, this is unfair. But what is worse is that customer service raised the credit limit of the people who voiced their concern. So they resolved the problem for these people, but they did not go back to the root cause. They did not change the algorithm itself. Even Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak, whose wife had been discriminated against, called for the government to investigate these black box algorithms. Because let's face it, the opacity may lead to public distrust of the results provided by these technologies that affect their everyday life. To regulate these new systems, the European Union, as soon as 2015, issued the General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR. And if you look at Article 13, you'll see that there is a demand that enterprises provide meaningful information about the logic involved by the systems. So, in a sense, more transparency.
I hear this first step forward, but I guess this is just the beginning. Marianne?
Yes, Marine. So the scientific community is seeking to identify the sources of bias in the training dataset and to define good practices. These practices will ensure, among other things, gender balance in this dataset and to neutralize the generators of these biases. The research community has also been working on interpretability models in order to understand the rationale behind the predictions of the algorithms that were developed. So, in addition to the technical aspects, there is also the human aspect to take into consideration in this equation. And that is by taking into consideration that AI teams must be diverse. Moreover, regulations are being put in place, especially at the European Union level, with a degree of control that adapts to the risk level of the AI applications. And to comply with the regulatory aspects and to ensure the creation and use of gender-neutral AI applications, governance must be put in place in each company. And that's exactly the purpose of our pledge, Marine, and its practicality in achieving this goal.
That is true. Thanks, Marianne. Thank you very much. And thank you all. Before we get to the pledge and in more details, I would like to take a moment to talk about Cercle Interrel, because since the very beginning of this event, you hear about Cercle Interrel, but maybe you don't know what it is about. So let's take a moment and talk about it. And I'm very pleased to welcome on set Florence Gury, who is the Vice President of Cercle Interrel. Hello, Florence, and thanks for being with us today. Firstly, how would you describe Cercle Interrel?
Cercle Interrel is an association of multiple gender diversity network in 15 technology companies. And actually, we just celebrated our 20th anniversary of actions towards gender diversity in the workspace.
How those actions concretize?
Actually, we have a very strong moment in the year around the 8th of March. That is under the form of a forum where nearly 30 people are actively thinking and working to provide an output based on their work, on a workshop on a very specific themes. These themes can range from salary treatment to how women can access to leadership roles, and even how women manage power and have the relationship on power. And lately, even how we engage men into gender diversity, because obviously we need them as to be strong ambassadors.
Of course. So I understand the mechanism of this annual summit, which is a highlight in the year. What is happening the rest of the year?
So the rest of the year is pretty around partnership with other French associations to scale and also have an external outlook of what others do, either from the governmental standpoint or even in other companies. We always need to have benchmarking and to do some best practice sharing. And also, more importantly, all our work is articulated around deliverables into a form of a kit. If I take an example, we'd like to help other companies develop a women's network. It's a very strong pillar to develop gender diversity in the workplace. So we delivered a kit for how to build a women's network. And also, more recently, parentality is something that is very important to balance and have a very well balanced work and life balance. So we created a kit about paternity. And as you know, very recently, and this is why we are here today, lots of interest around artificial intelligence. And before we go to the very strong work you did, I'd like to really also share that being in that space is more about coding. It's also to make sure that this specific job funnel is a big opportunity for the women to be in a workspace that actually has a lot of career opportunities, and we cannot miss that train for sure.
Indeed. As you said, Florence, Interrel has taken up certain major societal issue that impacts women, and this is what has been done with artificial intelligence. And in that respect, I would like to hand over to Sylviane Bordas, in remote. Can you tell us more about Women and AI group that deal with this subject?
Today, we are all connected with artificial intelligence, and that is why the Cercle Interrel has taken up the subject. We are now about 40 people in the team. It's an open team with a core of people who have been working in the group for almost 3 years. A team of passionate members with representatives from all companies of Cercle Interrel, with a large variety of profiles and competencies from different fields, majority specialized in AI, but also profiles in R&D, finance, sales, supply chain, and HR. A lively group which reinvents itself with each new membership and which works actively and regularly. Work that we carry out by associating a large network of partners involved in the subject.
By the way, we will be pleased to have Arborus, the Women's Forum for the Economy and Society, as well as the Center for Equity, Gender and Leadership at the UC Berkeley as School of Business, which will be with us later in this event.
Absolutely, Marine. Our team slightly changed the rules of Cercle Interrel, where normally the subjects and groups are renewed each year. We have made this group a long-lasting one, with the objective to develop in-depth analyses and deliver real and pertinent proposals. You have previously heard members of the group talking about usage of AI in our companies. that illustrates perfectly the reality of the companies in Cercle Interrel, companies from technology sector, most of them even using and producing solutions based on AI. Our goal is to raise awareness and address gender biases in AI by acting with our DNA, our expertise on the topic of gender diversity in business.
And on this specific subject, Asia Mouloudi, Laure Lebars, can you tell us more about the detailed content of the pledge?
Sure. Our focus with the Women and AI pledge is really to provide companies a complete action plan to fight AI bias in solutions. Any company either creating or using AI-based solution will benefit from this pledge throughout a set of practical tools enabling them to take actions and contribute to the creation of gender-fair solutions. So what is this pledge about? This pledge is really built on 4 very strong pillars. First, companies commit at an executive level to by signing a charter on 7 strong principles to build for an accountable and gender-fair AI solutions. Secondly, companies access an original self-assessment tool that help them evaluate throughout a grid composed of a set of practical criteria to see where they are regarding AI fairness. At the third level, then it's time to act. And here also, we help companies using a toolbox that is regularly extended and enriched by return of experience of our companies, but also of our ecosystem. Then, at the end, finally, these companies can lead as industry example toward this accountable gender-fair AI. So it's definitely a complete package delivered to companies to work internally and in its ecosystem toward this gender-fair AI. So the very beginning of the engagement is to sign a charter composed of 7 fundamental principles with an intention to commit and to work toward a gender-fair AI. And back to you, Laure, to present these 7 principles.
Yeah, so this charter consists of 7 fundamental principles that address the challenge about the governance, the technical, and the HR points of view. So the first principle is about organization and governance. So we recommend the implementation of a multidisciplinary AI ethics committee reporting to the top level of the company, the board of directors, for example. Then we have 5 principles who are addressing a number of technical tools and processes to reduce this risk associated to ethics and gender bias. So first, the compliance by design. So from the design of the AI system or an AI project to the deployment, and at each step, the teams involved need to be aware of those risks associated with the AI system. Then we have to look at data. We have to take a specific care on the selection of data, how to process the data. We have to make sure the data are not biased from the beginning, and eventually we may decide to delete or change those data. Then the algorithms, we mentioned it earlier, the ethical responsibility of those algorithms, it's important. So they eventually act as a black box. So we don't know exactly how we came to that result. So we may use specific tools that could help to trace, to explain, etc. This the result. So those tools will analyze, detect those issues. and we also asked to produce this document that will guarantee this transparency, this traceability, explainability, of the algorithms. We want to evaluate and monitor, so that's the fifth principle, so from the beginning to the end, so for the full AI life cycle. So evaluate, report, monitor, correcting if we have to, so for the full cycle. And this procedure has to be permanently in compliance with the regulatory context of whatever procedure exists. Then the sixth and seventh principle are more HR aspect. So first we need to address the diversity of those AI teams. And last, the seventh principle is about raising awareness and empowerment of all employees in the company.
And I would add that for each principles that you just described, the pledge is proposing with the second and third pillar, so a self-evaluation grid and the tool that will help to take improvement actions.
Exactly.
Okay. We had the opportunity to exchange on this subject with Elisabeth Moreno, French Minister in charge of equality between women and men, diversity and equal opportunities. At the occasion of the Cercle Interrel conference last March, Catherine Ladouce was asking her the following question. What do you think of this approach and how can it help to ensure that AI does not propose a misogynistic vision of society? And I propose you to listen to an extract of her answer.
C'est une démarche que Cédric O, notre ministre au numérique, et moi, nous soutenons ardemment. Parce que, comme je le disais tout à l'heure, on tend à blâmer beaucoup la tech et se plaindre des réseaux sociaux, se plaindre. Et j'aime à rappeler que ces outils sont des outils, rien d'autre que des outils. Et que ce sont les êtres humains qui font vivre ces outils. Et si nous n'avons pas davantage de jeunes filles qui s'intéressent à ces métiers-là, et j'en profite juste pour rappeler, je sais que beaucoup des personnes qui nous écoutent le savent, mais je veux le rappeler, les femmes ont de tout temps été dans la tech. Elles ont été même pionnières en la matière. Bien sûr. Ada Lovelace, Heidi Lamar, ce sont des femmes qu'on n'attendait pas dans la tech. Et elles ont révolutionné ce secteur. Et les hommes, lorsqu'ils ont vu que ça fonctionnait bien, se le sont appropriés. Bon. Qu'est-ce que ça veut dire? Ça veut dire que les femmes sont capables d'apporter leur savoir-faire dans la tech. Et encore une fois, parce que l'intelligence artificielle va faire partie de nos vies, fait déjà partie de nos vies, et ça va aller en se développant encore, et ce sont donc les métiers de demain, hein, je pense qu'on peut humblement dire que tous les métiers demain contiendront du numérique. Donc, si c'est là que l'avenir est, il faut impérativement que nous encouragions les jeunes filles à se former.
So we just heard the support from Elisabeth Moreno, and we can also say that this approach seduces company, as a majority of Interrel members already expressed their engagement by signing the charter, which is the first pillar, as we just said before. Muriel Garde, can you tell us more about those signatures?
Sure, Marine. The charter was open for signature in March to our member, and since then 8 companies have signed it. NG Lab Credion, GE Healthcare, IBM, Lenovo, NGE, Qualcomm, SAP and Schlumberger. Among these 8 companies, 24 leaders have indicated their commitment to the principle of the Charter that Asia and Laura present us earlier on. What is interesting to notice is how diverse is the profile of the signer. First, in terms of geography, the Charter was signed in China, in Ireland, and obviously in France. But also in terms of role, as we get signature from country general manager, lab director, chief financial officer, chief human resource officer, and obviously chief diversity officer. It demonstrates how this subject impacts all the business units of our companies. And on the name of all the team, I would like to thank all these leaders for their support.
Yes, I agree. A very warm thanks to those companies. And then, what is next, Muriel?
Well, we will continue first working with the other member of the Cercle Interrel to get new signature. And today, with this meeting, we kick off the pledge outside of the network. So all companies or organizations willing to take the path to a gender-fair AI would be able to commit and use the set of tools we created. We already received some requests for information, if I could say so. This confirms how relevant our approach is.
Thanks, Muriel. Thank you very much. Now I would like to propose you to hear testimonials from leaders who, better than anyone else, can explain why this topic matters and why they decided to sign the charter. So let's hear them.
Bonjour Marine, bonjour à toutes et tous. Je suis particulièrement heureuse d'être avec vous ce jour pour un sujet qui me tient très à cœur, la diversité, mais aussi tout particulièrement les femmes et l'intelligence artificielle. Alors, General Electric Healthcare s'engage parce que déjà nous avons depuis très longtemps initié vraiment cette démarche sur la diversité et l'inclusion et avec l'ensemble des équipes. Ensuite, dans ce monde du numérique, nous n'avons pas assez de femmes et nous le savons. Donc c'est un focus tout particulier qui m'a personnellement en fait vraiment donné envie de m'investir, mais aussi l'entreprise, sur plus de femmes dans cette intelligence artificielle. General Electric Healthcare, c'est aussi un acteur de santé. Nous assumons cette position et nous souhaitons vraiment travailler sur un numérique, sur une intelligence artificielle plus éthique. Et cette diversité avec les femmes, mais pas seulement, va aussi nous permettre d'accéder à cette intelligence artificielle plus éthique. Et puis dernièrement, c'est aussi une intelligence artificielle qui va nous permettre justement de continuer à améliorer cette médecine de précision absolument indispensable pour l'ensemble des patients. Alors à titre personnel, il y a maintenant presque 10 ans, j'ai décidé de m'investir en tant que femme pour permettre à une majorité de femmes justement de faire partie du monde de la société. Donc c'était vraiment important pour moi. Et puis aussi en termes de santé, j'investis maintenant, j'allais dire tout mon temps, toute mon énergie à travailler pour une santé plus solidaire qui permette justement aux patients d'avoir accès à cette innovation. Et nous ne pourrons pas y arriver sans l'intelligence artificielle et sans les femmes qui travailleront dans cet environnement. Alors ce pacte femmes et intelligence artificielle pour General Electric, il est absolument critique. Parce que déjà, ça va nous permettre de collaborer avec d'autres sociétés et de travailler dans le même sens. Et cette co-construction, elle est absolument nécessaire si l'on veut avoir plus de femmes dans, j'allais dire, le monde de l'intelligence artificielle et afin de créer cette médecine de précision dont nous avons absolument besoin. Donc c'est un engagement extrêmement fort sur lequel nous allons travailler dans les mois et les années à venir.
Over the product, solution and service from the Lenovo embrace the diversity and the inclusion as much as possible. We have a strong interest in to engage the topic of women in AI because AI is now playing an important role in Lenovo smart transformation. Lenovo aims to build an equal opportunity workforce. In our AI lab, we have more than 30% female employees. They do have equal opportunity on annual salary increasing and promotion. With this program of Women in AI, we will continue to work on increased female representation and participation in AI. First, it's my honor to be the sponsor for this Women and AI initiative. As the leader at the Lenovo AI Lab, I personally believe that AI will provide a new opportunity to increase female representation and participation in the future workforce. I do believe that the Women and AI pledge and over the deliverables proposed by Circle and in the Alice will gather our action on increased female representation in Lenovo. This pledge will also encourage more females to take their career in AI. When more and more female AI research join our community, we can have a more diverse idea and different thoughts on AI technology development, which will make our AI technology more trustful and less discrimination on genders, ages, and face colors. This will be the future of AI. Lenovo can definitely benefit from such a fair and trustful AI.
Hello, I'm Eric Marcadet. I'm the director of the SAP Labs Paris, which is part of SAP France, and I'm here to tell you how proud I am, to say that SAP Labs Paris and SAP France have signed the Women and AI Pledge for an accountable and gender fair AI. So that's very important for us because you know that SAP has articulated a large part of its strategy around what is called the intelligent enterprise. And of course, when you talk about intelligent enterprise, that means that all the technologies such as machine learning and AI are at the very core of what we're doing and how we are augmenting, I would say, the business processes with embarked and embedded intelligence. So that means that being an enterprise software editor, that means that not only we are using those technologies inside SAP, of course, but also we are embedding those technologies within the software that we are selling to our customers. And so we have a multiplier role, which is very important into making sure that the things that we are embedding, especially, they are not subject to any kind of unwanted bias. And this is why I would say everything around ethics and compliance and security and bias detection and everything like that is very important for us. Again, for us, it's not just important because we are using those technologies, but because we are embarking those technologies, and then all our customers can leverage them. So, as I said, now SAP France has signed that pledge, but we are now in contact with some other SAP labs in order to trigger the international effect that this initiative should go for.
Qualcomm is committed to diversity and inclusion in both its workforce and in the technology that it creates. We have strong diversity and inclusion employee networks who work both internally and with external communities. When we were introduced to Interels and saw the important technical work you were doing, we were thrilled to support the Women in AI Pledge. I personally support many organizations and initiatives around diversity and inclusion because I think it is both an ethical and an economic imperative. The world simply cannot continue to leave behind the talent and ideas of underrepresented people. Looking at Interels and the Women in AI initiative, I was impressed by the depth and the technical aspects of what you are working on. As individuals and organizations, as we research, design, and build out these promising new technologies, we need powerful, committed industry groups like Interels to work with on designing and using these technologies in fair and equitable ways. I am also intrigued by the goal of looking at potential bias in AI by a group who often suffers themselves from bias, that is, women. I believe this perspective is quite unique to the AI world. I'm proud Qualcomm is supporting Interels and the Women in AI initiative, and both Qualcomm and myself look forward to additional ways we can stay involved.
Thanks for each of them for their testimonials, which clearly demonstrate their understanding and will to take actions. And now I would like to take a moment with you, Laurent Butré, remotely. Hello, Laurent. You are the AI Lab Director at Schlumberger, the very first company which signed the charter and which already started to use the evaluation grid. Could you please share with us your experience of this second pillar and this evaluation grid?
Hello, Marine. Yeah, it's true. We were the first one to sign the charter for women in AI. When we started to look at this manifest and women in AI, how we can integrate the special care in our data sets and the problem that we are trying to resolve, I started to investigate around the company worldwide with the different teams of data scientists, what they were doing and if they were thinking about that. Everyone loved it, really. I was discussing with the data scientists team in Houston in charge of every HR related topics, and they confirmed me that they were actually already working on it. They were already conscious about the risks, and they were bringing special care to these processes. So when I told them that we have signed, or we are going to sign these manifests, and that there was a toolkit for that, they were so happy, because that kind of put a framework to what they were doing. So it was really adopted and accepted right away, and they say, oh, how can we help? How can we get more involved in the company, and so forth. So that's why when we signed that manifest, and we were the first to jump on it and sign it, we didn't only sign it in France, but we also signed it for Schlumberger worldwide, with the backup of all the different data scientist teams. So that was really a success. So the other thing that that I really like with that manifest and the toolkit, and the fact that we do these self-evaluation grids, and it brings all these topics to the table, it is perfectly aligned with what is going on and what is coming. So having this consciousness about the data that you are using, the model that you are generating, and what is the system that you are trying to model is really important to avoid mistakes and actually have effects that are opposite to what you are trying to solve. So keep that in mind. The toolbox provided gives some hints and help actually take or bring your conscience or your awareness where it actually makes an impact. So thank you, Marine. Thank you for the for that framework of the manifest Women and AI. It's an excellent start.
Thanks a lot, Laurent. Now I would like to come back to the second and third pillar of the pledge. I mean, the evaluation grid and the toolkit. With you, Thea Rukavina, thanks for joining me on set.
Thank you, Marine, and hello, everyone. So to make this implementation of the process a reality, we have developed several tools that can help companies go into the direction of an accountable and gender-fair AI. So after signing the pledge, we provide companies with an evaluation grid that can help companies actually evaluate their maturity and also get some good advice on how to progress. After this is done, there is the toolbox there that helps companies take action and use the tools that we have developed as a group, Women and AI. And for example, you can find there some documents like the job description of AI champion in the company or the missions of the AI ethics committee. Also, we are referring to some tools that are developed by our partners or that are available as open source tools to identify gender bias in some algorithms or some AI solutions. So we wanted to regroup all this into one place and create a sharing space for everyone to join, and that's why we have created a collaborative platform.
Let's make a demo?
Yes, of course. I will start by showing you this platform, which is a collaborative platform, and it is secure, so each person designated by the company will be able to access it with a login and password. The platform is bilingual, and here, as you can see just now, we can find an explanation of the 4 pillars in English and in French, and they have been already mentioned by Asia and Laure. There you can find the version of the pledge in English and in French with the charters signed by the companies who have given their support to our initiative for gender-fair AI. Then, if we go back to the toolbox, we have a list of tools that are divided by chapters, and all these chapters that you can see here, they follow the 7 fundamental principles of the pledge, and everyone will be able to download and use them. Also, as you can see down there, it is possible to share best practices with other users by submitting tools that are either developed or used by the company. From our side, we will evaluate each tool, and if it meets all the conditions, we will add it to the toolbox, which will be, in this way, constantly enriched. Now we can pass to the evaluation grid, and here actually you can see the results of one such analysis. We have developed both an Excel version of the grid, as you can see just here, and a web app that a company can use to assess their level of maturity. There are two types of evaluation, one for the company in general, and each company can choose if it is a producer or user of AI solutions, or if it is both. There are several categories of questions, and each company can choose the milestone that best matches its current situation. Then we can visualize all of this in one graph, where you can see the strong points of the company and some areas in which there is still progress that is needed. Here you can see the project evaluation, which you can use for evaluating every specific project with accompanying graph. Here it is also important to say that you can follow the evolution of maturity and compare the results for different dates, so you can really see if you have improved on these seven chapters. Each company will be able to decide whether to share its results with others and to discuss best practices and give feedback on the platform's forum. In addition, there is a calendar to add AI events that may be of interest to other users. And to conclude, our idea was to create a space for sharing and putting all the tools together in one place to encourage change and to go together towards an accountable and gender-fair AI.
Thank you very much, Thea, and I hope that this demonstration helped to illustrate the very practical aspect of the approach that we are promoting, which allows us to accompany companies on their action. As Thea said, this toolkit is intended to be constantly enriched. Would it be by the best practice from companies, by the tool that we are creating ourselves, Cercle Interrel, but also by the contribution of our partners. Because beyond making this page available, the group worked together with other actors who act for the same objective in order to amplify our impact and our contribution in society. Sylviane mentioned it earlier. As such, I wanted to give a voice to some of them, starting with the Women's Forum. And we have with us Audrey Chekhov, incoming Managing Director. Hello, Audrey. Thanks for being with us today. In few words, can you describe the action that Women's Forum is doing, and especially around AI? But also, can you tell us how would you define the complementarity of our actions and the interest of working together?
As technological advancements continue at pace, conversations around inclusive AI are also evolving. But despite some momentum, we are still collectively facing significant barriers with adoption of inclusive AI practices and the successful implementation of those practices. Since the launch in 2019 of our Women for AI Daring Circle, we've been focused around building the case for inclusive AI within organizations, to use research and the gathering of insights to foster real action. And we are a collection of corporate, academic, institutional partners committed to building an inclusive AI ecosystem. And because we know that we are stronger when we work together, the Women's Forum is collaborating with Cercle Interrel in our joint field building efforts to push the business community forward and to ensure alignment of our policy work. And we are very complementary in terms of entry points. Whilst Cercle Interrel focuses on building gender diversity into the development of AI, at the Women's Forum we are looking at inclusion more broadly, and also at how we can develop and deploy AI to actually increase inclusion. And this year, we have a strong focus on taking our message and case studies of inclusive AI in practice out to the new audiences and organizations that are in the early stages of their journey. And we know that we will only succeed in our work by engaging with existing partners, experts, and networks who are leading the research and the action to help. So we look forward to go further and faster thanks to our collaboration with Cercle Interrel, as well as other organizations such as the Oxford Internet Institute.
Thanks a lot. And I will continue with Geneviève Smith, Associate Director at the Center of Equity, Gender and Leadership at the UC Berkeley as School of Business. Hello Geneviève, thanks for being with us. Same question to you. Can you explain your action and the value you see to work in a coordinated way?
So we developed a playbook to help business leaders understand why bias exists in AI systems, its impacts, be aware of challenges to address bias, and execute 7 strategic plays to mitigate bias. We continue to work on and ask how business leaders can be better prepared to deal with these challenges and advance responsible AI. The work of Lenovo and its partners in Cercle Interrel is complementary to our own. It's a wonderful initiative bringing together different actors for gender equity in AI. The Women in AI Pledge is a valuable asset to spur action and support companies in this important work. There are several areas that link to our own playbook, and we've been excited to support this effort.
Thanks, Geneviève. And I would like also to share a message recorded by Cristina Lunghi from Arborus.
I am Cristina Lunghi, the founder of Arborus Foundation, which promotes equality and inclusion at the international level. Our organization is very specialized in methodological tools for companies to help them structure and evaluate gender equality, diversity, and inclusion policies. The best known is the GES, Gender Equality European and International Standard, whose audits are carried out by Bureau Veritas Certification, leader in certification in the world. Indeed, the COVID crisis shows us how much and how many are discrimination, especially between women and men, and that the development of artificial intelligence, twice as fast as before COVID, should ruin our efforts to promote equality. So we launched with the French Ministry of Digital, the Ministry of Equality and UN Women Generation Equality, in partnership with Orange Group, the first international charter for an inclusive AI, which is the first step before being audited and to go through a new certification, the GES AI. Orange Group has been certified GES AI in December 2020. In the meantime, we have decided to work with le Cercle Interrel and le Laboratoire de l'Égalité for several reasons. Because we are complementary and not in competition, the issues are so big and time is so short. We think this is crucial to have a unique message for companies to help them progress and have the best tools. So together, we are the solution. Thank you to the Cercle Interrel for this beautiful solidarity. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. And thanks to all the actors of the ecosystem, which, like us, work and act for the development of an AI which is responsible and trusted. It is now time for us to conclude this event. We hope that we clarified the stakes of AI around diversity. We also hope that we have given you the desire to act in that direction. And why not with us? Would it be because you are a company, because you are an organization, a school, or even a private person? Do not hesitate to get in touch with us. On behalf of the Cercle Interrel, and more specifically the Women in AI work group, we were delighted to share this subject which is very close to our hearts. And I want to thank you for participating to this launch event. and I hope to see you soon.